Introducing Zach Davis and Josh Anderson with the Sound Money Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Sound Money, Sound Principles of Believers podcast. My name is Josh Anderson. I'm here with my co-host and business partner, Zach Davis. How are you today, Zach?
I'm good, Josh. Hey, everybody.
Man, it is awesome to be here today. Today, I'm going to tell all the listeners, Zach, they are in for a special treat. This is, for me, I'm excited for the next few minutes that we're going to spend together with our special guest. This individual, I would put it this way. In the last 15 years of my business life, this is the only individual who has been able to take and make all of mine and your, Zach, our dreams come true. Anything we've ever been able to dream up and think of, this individual has been able to turn it into reality. Very few people can do that. Likewise, I would just say that our special guest today might be, and you and I have been around the world, might be the single most intelligent individual that I've ever come in contact with or done business with. Would that be a fair statement, Zach?
I'd say that's pretty accurate.
And so we want to give a special warm welcome today to Anthony Webb. Anthony is a world-renowned web software engineer. He's our business partner at a company called sound.money. And Stack and Sell and a few other ventures. And we've just been lucky enough in the world to partner up with this individual. And I'm excited for our guest to get to learn from him and his experiences today on what drives him as an individual. So Anthony, you want to say hi to the guests out there today?
Hey, I'm glad to be here. And I appreciate the warm welcome. That's a little bit more than I deserve, but I'll take it.
Well, you absolutely deserve it, and it's absolutely true. And so I want to just dive right in today, Anthony. You are what I consider to be a very unique individual. You see the world differently than 99.9% of the people I've ever done business with. I would just like to maybe ask you a couple simple questions around how do you actually see the world when it comes to entrepreneurial opportunities? What is it that you're looking for, and what is it that drives you? And how do you see the world when you look at those opportunities?
You know, it's an interesting question because I think that, you know, when I was little, just like a little boy, I remember, you know, my background was never, I mean, I maybe grew up in the infancy of computers, and computer has changed a lot over my lifetime, certainly. But I was that kid who would tear apart the radio control car to, you know, put a bigger battery in it to maybe make the motor turn a little bit faster. So it was one of those things that I was very curious about how things worked. And I think that in business, I kind of, you know, I kind of have a similar methodology, or, you know, the curiosity, I guess, to tear things apart and look at them. And I remember in my very first software university class, I met up with a mentor, and he told me, he said, "What are you going to do now that you're going to school, going to college? What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I you know," and at this point, I didn't really have a passion for computers, really, right? I was just kind of starting out, and I thought, well, I like math a little bit, and but people who like math are just accountants, so that's maybe what I'll do, you know. And I kind
of, you would not have been a good accountant.
I see that
terrible.
I see that now, but it was, you know, at the time it was just like I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the knowledge, you know. But this guy, he saw it in me, and he said, "Hey, you are a software guy. Like you are the engineer type. You know, you need to go into computer science." And I, you know, and he actually gave me a laptop, and he said, "Take this home and see how you like it." And, you know, it's the first laptop that I had ever had. And I remember that night I screwed it up. I got into the file system, and I was renaming stuff and doing it. At the end of the day, the screen wouldn't come on. And it wouldn't, and I was terrified because this mentor of mine, and laptops were expensive, you know, and he said, "Hey, you know, let's," you know, I took it into him just fearful of what he might say when I went in, and I said, "Hey, I got some bad news." I said, "That laptop that you gave me, the screen doesn't turn on anymore." And he just started laughing. He just said, "You are a true engineer. Like this is your calling." So he took me down to the computer fix-it store, and he was very patient with me, very gracious. And we learned what I had done wrong, right? And we got it fixed and we did it. And it was kind of one of those things that, was kind of transformative for me because I had validation that, now all I was good at the point at that time was just breaking things, and so it wasn't really, you could say it started off rocky, but quickly as I got into my university work, I started realizing that like you could program a computer to do things and it would do them very fast and it would do them very accurate. And I remember the very first time that we learned how to like loop over inside of code, we learned how to loop over and we outputted to the screen 10 times, like hello world, out to the screen. And I'm like, wow, that was fast. I couldn't even count how fast it outputted hello world. And then I also had another little snippet of code we had worked on the day before, which was how to send an email. And then, the mind started kicking around. I'm like, gosh, I bet I could send 10 emails really fast because that thing just ripped through there. I just need to put the email in there and I just send 10 emails. And so pretty soon I kicked it off and it sent myself 10 emails super fast. And I was like, wow, I could probably send 1,000 emails to my buddy and I just shut down his whole email system, and so I did it and I was like, oh, this is like, and I realized like that computers and compute and this way of thinking was almost like a superpower, that you had access to this, tremendous resource that, everyone grew up loving, superheroes, right? And you had your superheroes, some of them could see really well, some of them could, everyone had like this power. Well, I figured like, this is really amazing because this is my superpower. Like I literally can program a computer to do things that humans weren't capable of by themselves, and even at scale, right? And so I started realizing it, and I was hooked at that point.
I'm going to interject right now. I want everyone to know, absolutely, Anthony is a superhero. Okay, if I could choose today that I could be in business with Superman or Batman or Anthony Webb, I'm sorry, them guys are out. They don't have the superpowers that this guy has. So I love that you just referenced it because I've often referred to you to people as my superhero. Is that true, Zach?
That is true.
It's true. I mean, you get people, once you have the ability to do things that are bigger than yourself, and you have ability to, it really just becomes a matter of application. What do you choose to go after? What do you choose? What problems do you aim to solve? And really, I'm just so, fortunate that we live in the day and age when really we're only limited by our creativity and by our imagination. There really isn't a lot that, from a technology standpoint, that stands in our way of accomplishing things. So really, the question then becomes a bigger one of what is worthy of your time, right? Mm-hmm. Because we have this finite thing called time, right? And we all know that this is, something that we need to use wisely. And, and myself, first and foremost, and lots of us really don't use it wisely all the time. But really, when we stand back and we look at it, we say, what are the limitations that we have? And, unfortunately, time is the big one, right? And so, but certainly there are, everyone has different skill sets and everyone brings something different to the table. Mine that I bring is very technical, and it allows, crazy things to happen and crazy things to be accomplished. But when I would stand back and I look at it, I really ask myself the question of what is worthy of my time, and we all have to answer that, in varying ways. But I think for me, when I stand back and I answer that question myself, it really gives me clarity on what to work on next and where to focus, those resources in that time, to go, change the world. I'm
glad you brought that up because, you and I and Zach have been business partners and done business together. I was just thinking it's probably close to 18 years. I'm a capitalist pig. Okay, I'm going to tell the listen. Hey, these two gentlemen know me really well, right? Like deep down, right? Like I love capitalist principles, right? One of which is I believe that you should make the most amount of money that the market can bear. But Zach, you've been around Anthony a lot. You've probably watched him a bunch in this. That's not what guides him. What would you describe what guides him? And let's see if it's the same that he believes of what guides him in.
I want to hear this.
Yeah. What guides him in his endeavors of business pursuits?
Yeah. So we've asked Anthony to do a lot of projects for us and build a lot of things, right? And I would dare say, I'm thinking through all the years, the projects that we built, if it is really hard to get Anthony to build you something, if it's not interesting to him, right? If he doesn't think it solves, and I could be totally wrong, Anthony, you can correct me, but if he doesn't think it solves a really important problem or is really ingenuitive or shifts an industry off center from where it is or disrupts something, it's really hard to get Anthony to build it. Like, it seems like it needs to be more that, I mean, you could throw a bunch of money in front of him and it might be like, oh, maybe whatever, but if it's like, if it changes an industry or it's this wild idea that nobody has ever done, it's like, I don't even know if that's possible. That's when he'll jump in and be like, we should go try that. We should see if that's possible. Am I close, Anthony?
I think
you are very, I would say you're spot on. I mean, I feel a little bit sheepish that I've been so transparent about it now too, because I don't want you to think that I think some of your ideas are ugly, but
we know.
Oh, no, they're ugly. Maybe, Anthony, I would love you to tell from your perspective, right? We've never told the audience from our perspective, but I'd love it from yours because we sat around board tables for 2 years, architecting, designing, and building a company before it launched called sound.money. The fractionalization of gold and silver, the ability to have instant liquidity in the marketplace of gold and silver, and it is a transformational business. It would be what Silicon Valley would call a unicorn, right? It fits every parameter of what they call a unicorn company. In that discussion for 2 years and in the building, the development of it, before we ever told the world what we were working on, we had great debates around things like, I wanted lots of fees, right? Like capitalist, and we had pages of fees in the beginning that we were going to launch with. In that project, what was it that drove you? And what is it inside the SoundMoney wallet that drove you? And why did we end up in a position where there is absolutely just really no fees?
Yeah, I think that my experience has kind of taught me something, right? There's a lot of ways, especially as you look at, I mean, in software is some of the best business in the world. I'm just speaking, out of my perception. I guess we've got a whole bunch of ways to spend time, but software is one of those things that can touch so many people so quickly and expand so rapidly that it really is difficult to compete with, ideas that don't fit that mold. And so, like, for me, when we started talking about SoundMoney, perhaps, the things that I look at, I look for a very obvious problem. And for me, the problem couldn't be more glaring about, because I was in this situation. I had never owned gold or silver. And the main reason why I had not owned gold and silver wasn't because I wasn't interested in it. And it wasn't because people around me hadn't said, hey, you should think about having some of this. It was because, number one, is I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I knew I couldn't eat it. I knew I couldn't, it didn't have a lot of utility to me. And so the very logical side of me was like, if it doesn't have utility, I'm not interested, right? And so, and so I was, around and had heard about, and, but the people, my grandma had gold and silver. But I when she had it, I wondered, well, what's she going to do with it? And I really didn't quite understand what you could do with it. And it wasn't until we started brainstorming and we started answering that question of what is the utility of gold and silver that really piqued my interest, because I could clearly see the utility. Um, and it was very apparent to me that in order to provide that utility, there was going to need to be a software platform to make it all happen, because it couldn't happen at scale without it. And so, gigantic problem, just a huge opportunity, and one that would touch a lot of people. Like and specifically around the fees, Josh. Like if I'm going to build something that I wouldn't send my mother, or I wouldn't send my wife, or I wouldn't send my best friend to go and use, I'm not going to build it. I just won't.
I've
Right.
heard that damn
And,
argument
and
too many times.
I know. I mean, but it's true. Like for me is, yeah, the fees are great, and they wouldn't be uncommon. They wouldn't be unheard of. Everyone has them, and so it's kind of like they're just equally as poor in their approach to the customer, right? In my opinion, right? So when we started looking at this, I said, can the company sustain itself without it, right? And that was a question that we didn't know immediately, and so you have to take a little bit of risk, and you have to say, will the business model support it without it? We don't have any data to really tell us. And so, but I was pretty passionate that, and it was a product that I would send my wife to, and I wouldn't be pissed off if I found out that she was doing it, because, the value is there, void of all the oppressive types of nickel and dime that get happened. I'd send my mother there, right? I wouldn't have to fear that she was going to be taken advantage of. And so for me, those things are really important when I set out, because again, like I said, you can craft anything. You can spend your time building anything. But if it's not serving a need, and it's not taking care and being a good steward, to your neighbors, your friends, then if the only reason is for money, listen, you're making money a lot of ways. And so I'm pleasantly surprised that we were able to do this. I mean, here's the thing: when I stand up and fight for it without the data, it's an uncomfortable position for me to be in, because you without the data, you could be wrong, right? But I'm glad that to date it's worked out, and we've been able to offer the service in a very reasonable way that is serving hundreds of thousands of people, and really bettering an industry that in my opinion was deficient, and wasn't answering some of these questions. So we were happy to do it.
Well,
Awesome.
and what I think is interesting about that, Anthony, what you said is we could charge the fees, right? It's a valuable enough product. People would pay them. Like, they really would. And we can make a ton more money.
Sure.
But you don't always have to be a fat capitalist pig. Sometimes you can just build something really cool that people get to use, and everybody gets equal value, right? We can make way more money, but do we need to, right? Do we really need to make more money with that product, or can we just make it so it's awesome for everyone and people love to use it because it doesn't, like you say, nickel and dime them?
Yeah.
So I'm speaking today with two individuals. This doesn't happen very often, right? We went through a period there in the creation of that entity where I don't believe I'd be exaggerating if I said that we were told no, meaning no, it can't be done, with banking partners, service providers, software integrators that had to tie in so that we could, buy and sell gold and silver in real time, so we could have instant liquidity and be able to ACH money around the world to people. Would it be fair to say that we received at least 50 no's from major corporations around the world?
I mean, it's nonstop.
Yeah,
I mean, it's nonstop. We still get it today. I mean, the thing is like, this is the nature of this. These are my principles. Number one, you have to fail as fast as you can, right? You cannot you cannot be labor failure. I've seen this. I've sat in rooms with people who come in, we talk, they'll come back in a year and they're still in the same state of failure. But they've got some, and for me, I need to fail as absolutely fast as I possibly can. And two, consequently, in software development especially, listen, I've got a lot of experience, but I really just have more failures of what doesn't work inside of software. And so I can navigate through things maybe a little bit more efficiently than some other people. It's not so much that I have a corpus of knowledge that's a lot bigger. It really is just understanding what doesn't work well enough to, solve the problem in creative ways that kind of get around it. And so, but when we started this, we were totally naive to the challenges, and maybe that's a good thing when you start. But we've been told no at every single turn with this. Incredible the amount of no's, but it's kind of invigorating in some ways, because again, going back to my history tells me that there's nothing that's not possible with the right team that really sets out to change the world and doesn't take those no's for an answer, and keeps on turning over stones. And that's really what we've done, is found those partners who had just an inkling of they're crazy enough to just try, right, to at least hear us out, to at least move forward. And it's really fun to find like-minded people who are willing to push the bounds of what's what conventionally might be thought of as crazy. So I definitely I'm a big believer that this is kind of where magic happens, is in that stick-to-itiveness and that drive, which I wouldn't consider myself. I have an entrepreneurial background. I don't know necessarily that I have the risk tolerance that some of my partners do, but it's good. It really is a good balance, I think, because everyone kind of comes at it with their own, kind of their own ethos of how it should be and what it should be, and we fight like cats and dogs. But ultimately, when we gel on a decision, or when we gel on a direction, man, we get in and we fight tooth and nail. It's been fun.
Well, and what's really validating for me, you guys, is this whole SoundMoney project. maybe Anthony, you can talk about the 4-minute mile and the software in the venture capital space for a second. But what's really validating to me is all of these people that told us no. It's like, you can't do that. It'll never happen. People won't buy it. It won't matter. There's a lot of those that are coming back saying, "Hey, are you guys for sale? Can we buy in? Like, holy crap, you did it!" And now they're like, "We want a piece of it." It's pretty validating, right? When you cross that threshold and you get it done, and all these people now. And I'm not talking about the mom and pop shop down the street, right? The restaurant owner that's serving hamburgers at lunch that says, "Oh, that can't happen." I'm talking about presidents of huge financial companies like Visas and like these types of people now all of a sudden being like, "Hey, we want a piece of that."
Right. Yeah, it's invigorating. I love to and I think that some of that is made possible by really sound software. And obviously the principles come into play there, and being able to take a small team. That's the thing that's, I think, magic where software comes in, is that if you're creative enough, so many times I think that we look at our problems and we say, how can I, or when you're solving a problem, you say, what is my business model, and where can I find some software to kind of help me fill a gap to solve a problem? And so many times people take their business model and they will adapt it to whatever the software says is possible. So it fits in this box of this software package. So I go out and I find some software. I take my business model and I kind of dovetail it into that software. I hate that. I hate that approach. I really think
That'd
that,
be like the Spotify model, the Square
yeah,
model, right? Those type of
Yep.
things.
yeah, it's like when we look at a problem, we don't say, let's modify our business model to match the software. We say, let's build software to match our business model, right? It's not cheap to do it that way. It's certainly not easy to do it that way, but it enables you to do things in a way that's never been done, and really at a scale that you can't accomplish by just cobbling together a whole bunch of off the shelf things. And it's really just speaking on my soapbox of entrepreneurs and listening to entrepreneurs, people who are starting businesses. I think that beware of those people who would have you adapt or modify your business model to match whatever the software says is possible today. That really is, if you've got the right business model, and it will be apparent when you do, you move heaven and earth to make sure that you have the technology stack that allows that to flourish. Because I think back, I mean, as we looked at this problem, I mean, we're not pulling anything off the shelf to solve this, but so many people they're in this mode of trying to figure out, like, how am I going to do this, and how am I going to build this, and who could help, and these types of things. Stick to your business model first, right? And if you've got the right business model, the traction will start to happen. Software won't be a problem. If you've identified the business model that works, everything will be taken care of. I mean, in Silicon Valley, in the venture world, they kind of have this definition of the 4-minute mile, which is kind of like, this is in software. It's like, can you take a small team of people and accomplish big things, right? And so the metric is, can you take a team of less than 10 people, and can you do $100 million in revenue, right? It's a big, big feat. I mean, if you think about that, to try and accomplish that is really, really difficult. And it doesn't happen, very often, but it's been fun to kind of challenge some of those and blow away some of those, some of those records, and start to really understand, like, yeah, you can, with a small team, you can go out there and it can be done. But it really was born out of being really conscious about the model, being really conscious about, your goals and objectives, and really, really honing in and pulling together the right team to accomplish it. So it's been a lot of fun.
On that, I think a lot of listeners would be interested to know, kind of philosophically around. There's a lot of great software companies and companies out there that sell software and build software. There's lots of these massive companies that have started, that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars to start, and that's one philosophy. That's one way. There's another way where you kind of bootstrap things, and I've been around you enough and done business together enough to know that that's more your philosophy, right? Let's have a small team. Let's bootstrap it. Let's make it. Let's pay for it as we go, so we can be nimble and we can change. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, this is a real problem that I see in a lot of industries, where the minute that you go and you take, everyone wants to celebrate, like, we got so much money, we can do whatever we want now. But they kind of gloss over the fact that all that money came from somewhere and has some real strings attached to it somewhere, right? Whether it's ownership that you've given up, whether it's, and so very frequently you are a slave to the money that you've taken or the commitments that you've made. And back to my whole concept of failing fast. Like I said, I don't think if you've got lightning in a bottle, you'll not have a problem finding money, right? That's kind of the easy problem, finding money. The hard part is the lightning in a bottle part. So you need to really, really, and so I think that when you put the cart before the horse, when you go out and you raise a whole bunch of money and you take this and you're like, okay, now we can build it. what you very frequently find out is that that person who put up the money or the entity that you took the money from is now has high pressure on you to get a return on their money. And what it does is it really screws up your business model, because now you're pricing things based on the interest payment that you have to make for the money that you collected. And so you can't really even go out there and attack the market creatively, because you've done it backwards. And now it's like, hey, our widget has to cost $20,000. Well, why does it cost $20,000? We only have, this much into it. And that's, but it's because of the money that you've got out there. And so really, I think that the art is finding the lightning in a bottle and being really, really careful about how and when to bring on additional capital, to kind of supercharge that. And I'm not disparaging, anyone who's gone after and pulled down those big numbers and big money certainly there's a lot of ways to build a business, and there's a lot of big businesses that are built in a money first type model. But I just sleep a lot better. I at the end of the day, I feel like there is so many opportunities and so many problems to solve that you can go out there, innovate quickly, find out what's working, and then pour gas on the fires that you have lit. Not try and, figure out how you're going to find a spark for all this gasoline,
A couple of things you shared there that just, I've shared these with you recently, but the world is telling us, you and I and Zach, we all listen to a lot of people out of Silicon Valley. We study them. You turned me on about 15 years ago that I needed to lean in, you said, to technology. That at every turn I need to lean into it. And we've done that, right? At every turn we've tried to lean into the technology and keep on the cutting edge. The leading technology companies today have actually been coming out and saying things like, the money is drying up in this new economy today, where money's drying up, and there isn't as much investment capital. There isn't as much angel investment money. What's interesting is to hear people like you say, now we're actually going to have real innovation again, because 2 people are going to get laid off from Google tomorrow, and 10 people are going to get laid off from Apple, and some from NVIDIA, and they're going to go to their garages, and they're going to, on their own dime and their own time, without all this capital, they're going to build the next greatest things. They're going to build the next Apple, the next Google, the next Microsoft, the next IBM, the next Uber. They're going to build those things out of necessity. Do you really believe that's true and that's coming?
Absolutely. I'm seeing it all around, actually. And it's funny, it's not funny, but I do talk to a fair amount of engineers who've either been laid off or, just a victim of, some of the downsizing that's happening, but when you've got, an Elon Musk who goes into Twitter and, cuts a large percentage of the workforce, 80, 90%, and is more profitable than they've ever been, it really speaks to the waste that exists in that. And I'm not, certainly there are businesses that are very capital intensive that are going to blow through those kind of numbers, but it really is there. I'd say that when we start to see, and the people that I've talked to as they've come out looking for opportunities and looking for things to do, it very much is that they're getting together in small groups and they are innovating. And this is really what's, Google did this at their business, where they finally had to just stop and say, we're not working 5 days a week anymore here. We're working 4 days a week. And one of the days you're going to go out and innovate, and you're going to go do your own thing. It's free time or whatever. And out of that will come something that will be our next best thing, and the next best. And it's proven itself time and time again that people who kind of get heads down, and I think we all do this to some extent, where we start just put our head down and just go to work, and we're just solving the menial problems. We don't stick our head above the water and look around and say, hey, what's out there? And so I think that companies are wise when they cultivate that creativity within their ranks. And there's a lot of creative people, and it isn't, a lot of times people think, oh, I'm just not an entrepreneur. Well, you'd be surprised because a lot of people are capable of recognizing problems, right? And they may not be capable of solving all of them, but as they start to articulate those problems, start to share the challenges around, there's people around you that have the pieces to be able to solve some of those problems. So just because you don't have the skill set today, it doesn't mean, there was a gentleman who dropped off some lumber at my home. He dropped off for a project we were working on, and he was like, "Man, this is a great home." He's like, I'm in the process of saving up so I can go to school, but I'm just delivering lumber. And I said, "Well, what do you do in the after hours or whatever?" He said, "Well, I like to, this and that." He had 100 different hobbies. That, he would love to go fishing. He'd love to go, but he was saving up so that he could finally get enough money for that tuition to, those balloons going on.
Technology.
Technology.
How'd you do that?
He did some peace thing, and
No, I got to keep my hands down. But
Mine doesn't have balloons.
so anyway, but he was just waiting for his ship to come in. He was just saving up, and he'd been doing it for several years. And I told him, I said, "I'm going to give you, some advice." And I said, "Don't wait to have your tuition paid for before you go out and start chasing something." I said, "There's so much learning that can happen. All these institutions are you can go get an MIT, degree for free off of what they provide you online. All the classes are available to you online. If you have a passion, go chase it. There's so much material out there. It's very, very, available for the person who's willing to hustle." And, he kind of said, "I'm going to go do it. I'm going to go," and I don't know whether he ever did or didn't. He's probably out there fishing, but at the end of the day, I think that again, back to the time issue, we've been allotted amount of time. There really aren't limitations to the person who's willing to get out and grind and go hustle. There's resources out there. There's other people out there who are equally as interested in grinding. And really, it's just a matter of not allowing yourself to fall into that complacent, like, when's my ship going to come in? That's I think the trap that we all fall into, myself included, with determining how we're gonna allocate the resources that we have. But yeah, I that's a good point, Josh.
I appreciate that answer, and it's spot on to what matters most in the world, right? Utilizing our time in a more efficient manner to get what we really want to have, whether that's continue education online for free, or whether it's starting a business or home-based business, or you're chasing your dream. So, Zach, I'm going to let you last takeaways, you and Anthony each, your last takeaways from today's episode of the Sound Money podcast.
Yeah. So as Anthony was talking about this Google issue, right? He was talking about software and then talking about changing your business model to fit the software. It is 100% true. This is Anthony's good life. This is like nails on a chalkboard for Anthony. I hate technology. I do. I feel like I am held prisoner to technology, right? My phone's right here. I have to answer it. Everybody can get a hold of me now. The text messages come through. I want to get into a program, but I have an Apple computer and it's a Microsoft program. So I have to log into that account and use their system. And I forgot the password. But it's like, I hate
Hey, you're just a farmer. You're just a farmer.
See this right here? But those are so full of technology now, it's insane. You can't hardly even drive them. But so for me, technology, it is awesome. Okay. But for me, it's like, so I don't feel the same way about technology that Anthony does. But one thing I appreciate about Anthony is, and I think this is really important if you are in business, like, you can't not use it. As much as I don't like it, you have to have it. If you're going to compete in the world today, you better figure out how to like it. And, we've had experiences in the past so many times where you go to a company. This is one thing that ticks me off about software engineers. And I don't know that I would throw Anthony in a box of a software engineer. I really don't. Like, he is incredible at designing software, no question. But one of the things that is so void in this world of technology is you go to a company and you're like, I have this problem, I need it solved. And they go, okay, we already built this product, here you go. And it's like, that only solves half my problem. And software is extremely expensive, but it is so cheap. Like, it really, at the end of the day, it is cheap, right? I mean, Anthony can bootstrap a project for $100,000. But if a company comes in and says, we want this project built, another software company is going to say, well, that's going to cost you $500,000. But it can actually be built for $100,000, right? Yeah. It is so cheap. But the problem is most of these software companies don't have here's what Anthony's real superpower is. You all know what it really is, Anthony? I'll tell you. You might disagree with me. Anthony has a way of looking at a problem not as a software engineer. That's just his skill set as far as like the hard skill set. I can go make this computer do what I need it to do. But what really makes Anthony unique, and I think if you're going to go design software and if you're going to go solve a problem for your company or you're going to look for a software package, you need to find someone that has this skill set, in my opinion. Anthony is a master at asking questions. Like, he knows how to ask the right questions because he thinks like an entrepreneur and he thinks like a business owner, not necessarily like a software engineer. A software engineer looks at it and goes, okay, you describe the problem to me, and then I will build it exactly how you described it. Anthony goes, describe your problem to me. You describe the problem, and he goes, I don't think that's your problem. And you go, what do you mean you don't think that's my problem? And he goes, no. Have you thought about this? You're like, oh my gosh. No, I didn't think about, like, the problem I'm really trying to solve is this. And then he can go build the software to solve that problem. So the ability to think like a business user, a business owner, and an end user, rather than just a designer that's going to design this thing, right? And then be like, okay, now you just have to figure out how to use the thing I designed. What Anthony's superpower really is asking incredibly intuitive questions to get down to the real problem, and then designing a piece of software that you actually need to solve the problems a business has, because he can think like a business owner and go, this is the problem that they really have, right? And so when you if you're trying to solve a problem right now for yourself in your own company or whatever, and you're looking for software, you really need to go find someone that has some of these skill sets that Anthony has, and it's worth looking, right? Rather than just landing at the first company that says, oh, here's what it is and it's the cheapest. Poor people have poor ways. Yeah. Right. And so you got to find someone who is really invested in your business, as far as they love the problem that you're trying to solve, and they'll think about your problem rather than just go, oh, let me develop you a quick software package. Here it is. It's $10,000 a month, because that's the number in the industry, right? It's $10,000 a month, and I'll build you this thing. Yeah. Like, it just is. But so I think it's incredible the way Anthony does it, and his motives behind it. Like, and I think if most entrepreneurs would look at if they would look at the problems the way that Anthony has done it and that we've tried to do, rather than it's like, how much money can we make at the end of the day? It's more like, how exciting is this problem to solve, and how will it change humanity? We would have a lot more wins. Your case in point with what you said about Google and all these software engineers that are getting laid off, and this goes back to software is cheap, right? You take a project at Google and it's like $5 million. You take the two engineers that just got fired and they're working in their garage, they're going to build something more innovative than Google's going to come out with this year, and they're going to do it for less than $50,000. Yeah. Right? It's like, that's going to happen. And I think it's incredible, because why? Not because they're motivated about the money, but they're going to get interested in a problem and go, how cool would it be to solve this problem for humanity, and watch the world use this software to solve it? And that's what's going to drive them. And they're going to change the world for $50,000, right? And it's going to take Google 10 years and $5 million, and they may not solve it.
True. Anthony, last parting words for the guests today, for the listeners today.
You know, I think that my takeaways, and maybe, just something to think about, is like, we live in an incredible day and age, and we have so many utilities at our fingertips, right? And even, I'd say, in the last year, even, we're just growing at leaps and bounds with some of the advancements in AI and others. And the time is ripe really for innovation. It's really ripe for people to identify and solve problems. And I think we're on the cusp of some just really exciting advancements. And it's really going to come from people just like your listeners who are out there, who are, fed up maybe with an issue that they've had and really, if we will utilize those tools that are at our disposal, and I'm not big into social networking. I'm not really on social networks. A lot of people find that surprising because of the industry I'm in. I just need to allocate my time differently. But there are a lot of people. We live in a really connected world, and I think that don't be afraid of going out there and trying to solve big problems. Don't be afraid to go out there and open your mouth and to talk to people and to really, drive into some of this stuff, because I think that the time is right. And I will say this too. I ended up, it's funny. We sold the company, ended up doing some time in corporate America, Cisco. And it was funny. There was a guy there who, he kind of came in and he had sold a company to Cisco, and a few months later, all of a sudden he was leaving Cisco. And I was like, hey, he just barely got here. What's he doing? Or whatever. He left. And then he was back 6 months later with another company that he had sold to Cisco. And I was talking to him one day. I was like, how'd you do that? Like, what, and anyway, he did this over the course of 6 years. He sold 4 companies to Cisco.
Wow.
And I was like, man, this guy is either really good, or I couldn't quite grasp how this was happening. But really what it comes down to is the big companies that are out there, they aren't doing you a service when it comes to innovation. You think they are. You think they got all the money. They got all the engineers. If it didn't come from them, it must not be a solution. The farthest thing could be from the truth. Here we got a guy who comes back in. He's like a bad penny, keeps on coming back, but he's innovating outside, right? And he's got a nimble team, and he's working hard, and he comes and ultimately sells into the big company. But where's his mind, and where's he going next? He's going right back to the well to go solve some problems, because you can't solve those big problems in a corporate environment that you're shackled by red tape and all the things. So small business, to me, is everything. I think that, but small business is driven by, simple people. And they're people that are people just like, the average Joe. These solutions that are coming out, these people aren't, special or anointed type people. They have good connections. Many of them have connections, but the connections just came by opening their mouth and by making the connections. And so that would be my, kind of parting thought. Open your mouth, go make some connections, be real about the problems that you have, and really look around and hunt for those solutions, because I think that, great days ahead, but it's all driven by people like you and I.
I can't agree more with the two of you. I love problems. I don't know why I was born this way. I love them. I love little ones, big ones. I love the hunt and the pursuit of solving them. And I can just echo that there has never been an easier, greater time to be on the earth than right now. Even in the last year, Anthony, what used to take us sometimes 10, 20, and 50 marketing executives to work in development of imagery and linking up UXs in websites and building those things is now being done with AI with simplicity in seconds. And I just look at it and go, I made this note while you were talking. I don't believe that the next 100 years that manufacturing, the production of items, will change the world 1 ounce. Because manufacturing and those things or everyone will be able to do those things, because technology is developing so quickly and it's becoming so inexpensive. For example, many of our listeners probably have 3D printers and are making manufacturing their own things, right? They have CNC machines that are making things in their garage, right? They have laser engraver. the manufacturing of things, anyone will be able to do that. I honestly believe that technology and the cost of technology is getting down to the point people can do those things. What will matter the most is, are you willing to go fix a problem? And are you willing to use technology of the day, namely AI technologies and software engineering solutions, to solve problems? And if you are, that's how you'll be compensated the greatest in the world in the future. And it's just never been a better time to be alive, to be a problem solver, because that's at the end of the day what an entrepreneur is a problem solver. So, Anthony, it has been awesome to have you with us today on the Sound Money, Sound Principles podcast. And just want to say thank you for all you do for humanity, for people around the world who want to interact with the software that you provide, and for making a difference. Continue to do it. Continue to find big problems and big solutions for the world. So thanks for all you do.
Thanks for having me. Been a blast, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All
Anthony.
right.
Thanks,
You
Josh.
guys have a great week. Can't wait to see you next time on the Sound Money, Sound Principles podcast. Everybody have a great week. See ya.
See you, everybody.